The 18th Discourse. O my people! You must try to reach the point of steadfast commitment to the worshipful service of your Lord. Almighty and glorious is He, for He comes to those who stand obedient before Him. The Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, is reported as having said, whenever the servant stands for a long time in the presence of his Lord, Almighty and glorious is He, dutifully performing his ritual prayer, his sins are scattered away, just as the dry leaves are scattered from the trees on the day when a strong wind blows. And whenever the servant is genuinely sincere in obedience to his Lord, Almighty and glorious is He, his sins are scattered and cleared away from him, both from the outside and from the inside. His heart is filled with light, and his innermost being becomes pure and serene. You must be correct. You must be eloquent. You must be correct in your private life. You must be eloquent in your public life. If you are correct in this world, you will be correct in the hereafter. You must also be eloquently outspoken in the presence of Allah. Almighty and glorious is He. You must plead with Him on behalf of your fellows, for He will accept your intercession in favor of any of His creatures whom He may wish to bless. After granting His permission and issuing His command, He will give effect to your request, as a miraculous gift of grace to you, in order to give visible proof of the position you occupy in His sight. You must be correct in the relationship that exists between you and Him. You must be eloquent in giving instruction to His creatures, for whose sake you must become a teacher and an educator. Woe unto you! You sit up here and preach to the people, then you mingle with them to laugh and tell funny stories. There can be no doubt that neither you nor they will prosper. The preacher is an instructor and an educator, while those in his audience are like young children. A youngster will not study unless one is tough with him and treats him firmly and sternly. There are no more than a few individuals among them who can keep up their studies without this kind of treatment, being gifted with a special talent from Allah. Almighty and glorious is He. O my people! This world is transitory. This world is nothing but shackles and beatings, cares and woes, and a veil between you and your Lord. Almighty and glorious is He. You must look at it with the eyes of your heart, not the eyes of your head. The eye of the heart looks at the inner contents, while the eye of the head looks at the outer form. The true believer belongs entirely to Allah. Almighty and glorious is He. Not a single atom of his being belongs to creatures. Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, is in charge of both his outer and his inner. He makes no movement except because of Him, and He does not come to rest except because of Him, for He has His being entirely because of Him, from Him, and in Him. With footsteps firm He has trodden the path to His door, while they were too sound asleep to notice, and there He stands at His service. As for all of you, you have devoted your attention to the acquisition and procurement of your allotted shares of worldly goods, driven by greed and ambition. You have quite forgotten about death and that which lies beyond it. You have forgotten the Lord of truth. Almighty and glorious is He, and His power to bring about change and transformation. You have left Him out of sight behind your external appearances. You have turned your backs on Him and settled for the company of this world, creatures, and material means. Most of you are worshipping this world and your money, while neglecting the worshipful service of the Creator and Provider. All of these disasters and calamities are brought about by your own lower selves, so it is incumbent upon you to keep them in confinement inside the prison of strenuous exertions. You must cut off their supply of raw materials, by preventing them from gaining access to any of the things that give them pleasure. You must keep them cut off from their supplies, until they can imagine nothing more desirable than a crumb of dry bread and a swig of water. This should be all the food they get to satisfy their appetites. If you fatten them up with all sorts of juicy treats, they will devour you too. You will then be in the situation described by a certain righteous man, who once said, "If you let your dog grow fat, it will devour you. Do not fatten your lower selves, for they will devour you." Just as when someone takes a wild dog, looks after it and fattens it, the beast will surely devour him when he is with it alone. Do not give free rein to your lower selves, or sharpen their knives, because they will throw you into the ravines of perdition and betray you. Deprive them of the things they love, and do not give them scope for their desires. What good can be expected of the lower self? Allah, exalted is He, has said concerning it, surely the self is always inciting to evil, except inasmuch as my Lord has mercy. 1253, O my people, take heed and remember. Only those with powers of understanding will ever take heed. 39:9, the people are those with powers of understanding. They grasp the true significance of this world, and so they have abstained from it. Then they grasped the significance of the hereafter, so they entered into it, until its trees sprouted for them and its rivers flowed for them, and it was theirs to enjoy in wakefulness and in sleep. But then they came to feel the love of the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is He, so they got up and left it and travelled beyond it. They tightened the girdles of their hearts and set forth in the direction of the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is He. They came to be numbered among those who seek His countenance, and who wish for nothing other than Him. You must look for the blessing of these people. You must seek them out and then become their servants. Approach them and take shelter in their company. O Allah, grant that we may be well behaved in your company under all circumstances, and in the company of the righteous among your servants, and give us in this world good, and good in the hereafter, and guard us against the torment of the fire. 2:201, the 19th Discourse. You had better sit up and take notice, O slave of this world, O slave of creatures, O slave of the robe and the turban, of the dinar and the dirham, and of praise and blame. Woe unto you! The whole of you is devoted to this world. The whole of you is dedicated to something other than your Lord, almighty and glorious is He, and His worshipful service. All those who possesses an intelligent mind, an inner content and a faculty of discrimination, will surely worship their Lord, almighty and glorious is He, and will always turn to Him for guidance in matters that affect their vital interests. If a person has no intelligence, on the other hand, he will do nothing of the kind. His heart will be transformed into something less than human. The love of this world is ever on the increase. Those who make an outward profession of Islam will actually say, as the unbelievers have said, there is nothing but our life in this world, we die, and we live, and nothing but time can destroy us. 45:24, this is what the unbelievers have said, and there are many amongst you who would say the same. They make it obvious, for they express it through the actions that mark their behavior. In my estimation they amount to nothing, they do not even carry the weight of a mosquito's wing, so how significant can they be in the sight of the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is He? They have no intelligence and possess no faculty of discrimination by which to tell the difference between what is harmful and what is beneficial. O servants of Allah, remember death and what lies beyond it. You must remember the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is He, and His ways of dealing with His creation in His lordliness and His majesty, and you must reflect on this in private, when you have withdrawn from the company of your family and when other eyes have gone off to sleep. When the heart is worthy of Allah, almighty and glorious is He, He does not let it stay in the sphere of buying and selling, of trading in material means. He singles it out for special attention, saves it, raises it up from its fallen state, lodges it at His door, and lets it sleep in the chamber of His gracious favor. O you who have turned away from your Lord, almighty and glorious is He. When the dust has cleared, as will happen very soon, you will see the ruin of your house. The Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is He, He will expose you to devastation, unless you come back to your senses, wake up and pay attention. Woe unto you! The shirt of your Islam is torn to shreds. The robe of your faith is soiled. You are naked. Your heart is ignorant. Your innermost being is confused. Your breast is not opened wide to Islam. Your inner is a wasteland while your outer is flourishing. Your record sheets have all been written on. This world of yours, which you love so much, is about to move away from you, while the grave and the hereafter are coming toward you. Wake up and pay attention to the state of your affairs and what you will soon have to face. Your death may happen today, or even in this very hour, intervening between you and your expectations. When a person knows what he is seeking, he attaches little importance to what he must sacrifice for it. When someone is sincere about love, he will not stick with anyone but his beloved. Suppose some creature were to say, I have heard of the Garden of Paradise and the bliss it contains, through the words of Allah, almighty and glorious is He, and therein is all that souls desire and eyes find sweet. 43:71, so what does it cost? Our reply to him would be, Allah, almighty and glorious is He, has said, Allah has bought from the believers their persons and their goods, the garden being theirs for the price. 9:111 You must surrender self and property, then it will come to be yours. Suppose someone else were to say, I wish to be one of those who seek his countenance. My heart has caught a glimpse of the door of his nearness, and has seen the lovers going into it and coming out of it wearing the robes of honor conferred by the king. So what is the price of entry? To him we would reply, you must sacrifice the whole of you. You must give up your carnal appetites and pleasures. You must become so absorbed in him that you cease to exist. You must say goodbye to the garden of paradise and all that it contains, and leave it behind. You must say goodbye to the lower self, to passions and natural inclinations. You must say goodbye to desires both worldly and otherworldly. You must say goodbye to everyone and leave them all behind the back of your heart. Then you may enter, and then you will see things that no eye has ever seen, that no ear has ever heard of, and that have never occurred to any human heart. Say, Allah, then leave them. 6:92 He who created me, and he guides me. 26:78 O you who abstain from this world, when your heart moves away from it, seeking the hereafter, say, He who created me, and he guides me. 26:78 And you, O seeker of the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is he, you who are longing for him and abstaining from everything apart from him, when your heart moves away from the door of the garden of paradise to go looking for its master, say, He who created me, and he guides me. 26:78 You must pay close attention to his guidance over the rugged stretches of the path. O my people! You must respond to my call, for I am calling you to Allah, almighty and glorious is he. You must turn again to your Creator with your hearts. All of you will soon be dead. You must pry open the door of repentance to him and offer a plea for forgiveness in his presence. You must be acutely aware of him. You must realize that you are under the supervision of a close and watchful overseer. Surely you must have heard his words, exalted is he, there is no secret conference of three, but he is the fourth of them, nor of five, but he is the sixth of them, nor of fewer than that or more, but he is with them, wherever they may be. 58:7 Satisfy your hunger with the food of his love, quench your thirst with the juice of his intimate friendship, and look for help in his nearness. O you who are dead at heart! O you who are firmly seated in hypocritical pretense, stand up! Stand up before you are cast aside. Stand up before you are destroyed. O you who are firmly seated in the place that is only dry while the tide is low, stand up before death comes to you. Stand up before the water comes flooding in beneath you. Get up off the ground of your idolatrous polytheism and move to the ground of your affirmation of divine unity. Our Lord, set us up in a trade that will make you well pleased with us. Our Lord, do not cause our hearts to stray after you have guided us aright. 3 Late, do not cause our hearts to incline away from the truth. Do not let them depart from following your book and the Sunna of your messenger Muhammad, Allah bless him and give him peace, and from putting them into practice. Let us not depart from the high road, from following in the footsteps of the prophets and messengers, the martyrs and the righteous, may the blessings and peace of Allah be upon them one and all. Let our spirits be together with their spirits. Let us enter the abode of your nearness, in this world and then in the hereafter. Ameen. The 20th Discourse If, on the day of resurrection, there were any means available to the lovers, by which they could avoid going into the garden of paradise, they would not enter therein, because they say, what have we to do with creation? We wish for the Creator. What have we to do with anything that is relatively new? We wish for the infinitely pre-existent one. If this heart is sound, it will possess the necessary qualifications, so it will certainly be drawn near to the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is he. If it is sound, it will be utterly detached from this world and all creation, so it will be worthy of nearness. Woe unto you! I have been standing at the door of the Lord of truth, almighty and glorious is he, from my childhood until the present time, whereas you have never even seen it. Your heart has seen neither the door nor its owner. You are in the east, while this to which I am referring is in the west. Come to your senses, then receive an education, and you will see. I have never disregarded my intellect, except when I was at his door, in the company of the elite among his servants. Say, the trustworthy one has spoken the truth, and inform your mind accordingly. O friend of Joseph, you must tell about what you have in your possession. You must accept responsibility for what is behind you. You must speak from your heart and your conscience, or else hold your tongue. You must spend on charitable causes from your own store of precious metals, from your own treasure, from what you have in your own home. But on no account must you steal and spend. You must feed people from your own dish, and let them drink from your own supply of water. The truly experienced believer can always quench his thirst by drinking from a source of water that never runs dry, a well which he has excavated with the pickaxes of his self-sacrificing efforts and his truthfulness. There is no garden of paradise before this world, and no getting close to the garden. The servant draws close to this world, wishing to possess it all, but then its faults become apparent to him, so he learns to abstain from it, and comes to be satisfied with just enough of it, with no more of it than one cannot possibly do without. That much of it he takes with the hand of the sacred law, with dutiful devotion and with cautious restraint. That much he accepts from the hand of pious abstinence, from the hand of the heart, not from the hand of the lower self, the passions, and the devil. Then, when he has completed this process of development, the garden of paradise will come to him, because his abstinence from this world is the price he must pay for the garden and its bountiful gifts. Once he has caused his heart to enter inside it, as soon as his feet are firmly planted there, and when his innermost being is firmly in control, all of its affairs will become easy for him, and all of its benefits will become readily available to him. Having achieved this situation, he will notice the men of the Lord of Truth, Almighty and glorious is He, for they will be heading in His direction. Where are you going? He will ask them, and they will reply, to the door of the King. Then they will make him feel the longing to go there too, and they will point him the way to reach it. They will remain detached from the garden and from all that he is involved in, and they will tell him, we are numbered among those concerning whom Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, has said, they seek His countenance. 652. The land of the Garden of Paradise will therefore seem too narrow for him, however spacious it may be, and he will try to find a way out of it. He will act like a bird that flutters at the door until it is allowed out of its cage. He will cry, I feel like a bird that has been confined inside a cage. My heart has come to be inside your prison, because this world is the prison of the ordinary believer, while you are the prison of the believer who has had direct experience. Thus, in a state of exhaustion, he will leave the garden behind, and join those people of the Lord, Almighty and glorious is He, who have passed that way before him. This is the path of the spiritual wayfarers. As for the path of the reformers, the lightning flash of nearness makes them fully experienced at the very first step, without the need for gradual progress by intermediate stages. O Allah, bring our hearts near to you, and give us in this world good, and good in the hereafter, and guard us against the torment of the fire. 2:201 The 21st Discourse. The people have deeds to their credit like a mountain of goodness, yet they do not regard them as adding up to one good deed. Their attitude is one of humility, and they put themselves on a very lowly plane. You should take this as an example of the humble behavior you ought to be practicing. Your own attitude must be one of humility, of cautious awareness and timidity, as a precaution against disturbing and spoiling the pure serenity of the innermost being, and causing upset feelings in the breast. If you keep this up as a regular practice, a sense of security will come to you from Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, setting a seal upon your heart and your innermost being, and paneling the walls of your private retreat. For these, as well as for the limbs and organs of your physical body, there will come to be signs and indications, spoken tidings, and expressions of glorification and remembrance. Your heart will hear marvelous wonders, but even if a word of this were to come out through your mouth, not a word of it would be heard by your own outer self or any of your fellow creatures. This will be something that is not at all difficult for you. Indeed, you will become accustomed to this as a blessing that is often talked about within your own self. And as for the blessing of your Lord, tell of it. 93:11 O Saint, you must talk about these inner blessings you and your own self, whatever you may be involved in. You must talk about the blessing of your Lord, Almighty and glorious is He, and the gracious favor He has bestowed upon you, but you must do so in private, because concealment is one of the preconditions for being a saint, whereas open disclosure is one of the preconditions for being a prophet. In the case of the saint, his open disclosure can only be toward Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, for if he makes his business public, he will be taken to task and deprived of his spiritual state. It may be, however, that his business comes to be publicly known purely through the action of Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, in which case he will not be subject to chastisement and reproach, since he cannot be held responsible. Somebody once said to me, I notice that, when anyone else receives a spiritual experience, he will always keep it a secret, whereas you will disclose it openly. I responded to this by saying, Woe unto you! We have never made anything public. This disclosure happens involuntarily, because of a superior force, not by deliberate intent. Whenever my reservoir becomes full to the brim, its contents must be reduced, so, when the opportunity arises, they spill out all around it, without my having any choice in the matter. What am I to do about it? Woe unto you! You are devoting all your attention to the contributions and the state of your finances, to the group premises and the people. Your heart is too full. You must take to the deserts and the empty spaces. Then, when he has brought you the treasure of nearness to him, that is when it will be appropriate for you to settle down among the people, for then it will be their turn. May Allah bestow His mercy upon anyone who believes what I have to say, upon anyone who tastes what I have to say, upon anyone who puts it into practice in his private and his public life. O my people! You must go on struggling and making strenuous efforts, and never give up in despair, for relief may come at any moment. Surely you must have heard him say, Exalted is He, it may be that Allah will bring some new thing to pass thereafter. 65:1 You should be afraid of your Lord, and you should also pin your hopes on Him. Surely you must have heard him say, Exalted is He, if Allah warns you to beware of Himself. 3:28 To the extent of your fearfulness and your wariness, you will experience safekeeping. Put all your trust in your Lord, and devote yourselves to Him. Surely you must have heard him say, Exalted is He, and whenever someone puts all his trust in Allah, He will suffice him. 65:3 O Allah, enable us to do without your creatures. Enable us to do without those who have accumulated material possessions, then piled them beneath their feet and swaggered over them. They are immersed in their arrogant pride. The poor come begging and pleading for their help, but they pretend to be deaf. O Allah, include us among those who lay down all their needs before you alone, among those who appeal to you alone for help with things that are important to them. Ameen. The 22nd Discourse Sufyan ath-Thawri, may Allah bestow His mercy upon him, was once asked, who is properly described as an ignoramus? So he said in reply, the ignoramus is someone who is so unaware of his Lord, Almighty and glorious is He, that he does not apply to Him for his basic needs. A person who does not apply to Allah, Almighty and glorious is He, for his basic needs can be compared to a man who works in a king's palace, performing a task which the king has ordered him to carry out, but who leaves his work and goes out to the door of a man living in the same neighborhood as the king, to ask him for a slice of bread to eat. One can easily imagine how the king will despise him and strip him down when this is brought to his attention. How will it be for you to die, when you have not yet recognized your Lord, Almighty and glorious is He? O Allah, bless us with the experience of being aware of you, of working sincerely for your sake, and of ceasing to work for the sake of anyone other than you. Bless us with your knowledge, both the knowledge of the outer and the knowledge of the inner. We have practiced patience and contentment, so sweeten for us the bitterness of your tribulation, your knowledge of which has long preceded our own. Cause the flesh of our hearts to die, so that we may not feel the painful snipping of the scissors of your power, and so that we may enjoy your companionship forever. Ameen.